Okay. Okay, we're going to continue on. We're starting on page 156 with rotating objects. So we're going to work with what we have on this pre-built file again. Lots of ways to rotate artwork. Precise, freeform, lots of different ways. Hopefully everything is fit in the window. If not, do a fit all in window. And then let's take our selection tool and click on the yellow raincoat dude way below our artboard. And we're going to want to zoom in down there. So select him, and with the selection tool off to the edge of one of the bounding boxes, you'll get the rounded arrows. And we're going to turn on him counterclockwise, and as you're doing that, if you hold the shift key, it's going to constrain you. In the real world it does, in 45-degree angles. So when you get to 90 degrees, let go of your mouse and then your keyboard modifier. The selection tool that we're using rotates around a center point of your graphic by default. So that middle button, like the middle point of this graphic, is where he was spinning around. Hold down the space bar to get your hand tool and move over until we see this other shape, which is to the left. And with your selection tool, select this group. So it's three rectangles or three rectangles and a line with a stroke, not sure. We're going to go back to get our rotate tool, which is nested underneath the reflect or scale tool probably, unless you have these split up as individual tools. The rotate tool is the one that we want again. And before we do anything with this one, do you see how the center of the artwork by default is where that bullseye is, where it's being reflected from? We're going to set it at the bottom of this brown shape. So click down there to set your rotation or anchor point, the reference point down there. That's where it's now going to rotate around. Okay, we're going to move our selection pointer off the right side of the selected artwork, and we're going to begin dragging clockwise. As we drag, we're going to hold down two keys, Option and Shift. Shift is going to keep it constrained. What's Option going to do? Make a copy. Remember how that works? So start dragging, hold Shift to keep it constrained, and then hold Option to make a copy. And we're going to take this to -90 degrees and then let go of our mouse and then our keyboard modifiers. So that made a copy of it and pivoted it around that new anchor point that we set over to that side. The Properties panel is another way that we can rotate artwork precisely. With this object still selected, up in our menu bar at the top, we're going to choose Object, Transform, and Transform again. So whatever we just did is going to be equally applied. So it's going to go another -90 degrees, and do that again. And we're going to do that one more time. Object, Transform, Transform again. Notice there's a shortcut for it, Command D. So Command D would give us that last piece also. So if you're rotating things by, say, just 5 degrees, say you're making a flower and you've got that one petal, and you're going to rotate 5 degrees and make a copy, and you want to keep doing that all the way around, that redo, Object, Transform again, Command D is a shortcut to keep doing that all the way through. Take your selection tool and drag across all 4 pieces to select them all and group them. Use the button in the Properties panel to group them. And then with this group still selected, we're going to rotate it. So leave it selected, bounding box around it, and we're going to switch over to the rotate tool in the tools panel. So switch to the rotate tool and double click, on the rotate tool. That's going to bring up a dialog box where we can tell it a specific number. We're going to type in 45 degrees in our angle, and preview's turned on, so if we hit tab to accept that, we see what it does, how it tipped it for us, and that's what we want. So we're going to say okay. Had we wanted to make a copy of that but keep the existing one, we could hit copy, and then our original one would stay here and this copy would twist 45 degrees. But we're just doing the rotate 45. Zoom out so you can see the artboard above, and then with our selection tool, we're going to move this up to the top of our windmill. And you might need to zoom in to get it positioned better once it's there. And then click away to deselect. And then let's save our file at this point. All right, next effect we're going to look at is distorting objects with different effects. Let's go down on this artboard to one of the flowers and select it, and then zoom in on it so you can see it a little bit better. This is a group. We move the entire flower as one unit, but you can see it's made up of a bunch of shapes. So to edit individual shapes inside this group, rather than ungrouping it and fiddling around, we just double click on it to go into isolation mode. So double click on that flower. That puts you into isolation mode, and you can tell everything else has been grayed out, and then there's this additional gray bar at the top here that tells you that you're drilled down into the group and you're working on just this group. If it was a group inside of a group, you'd have to double click one more time to drill down to that group to edit it. All right. Once we get to this point, I want you to click to select this larger orange circle. And then we're going to go over to our properties panel where we see appearance, fill, stroke, opacity. Underneath that is the FX. Choose an effect button. Click on that. And notice at the top we have Illustrator effects and Photoshop effects. And a lot of them are similar. Things that you see up here, you also see down here. Whenever possible, keep all of your effects in the Illustrator effects choices. Work from this top part because these are still vector objects. When you apply some of these special effects from the Photoshop family, it turns it into raster art, it turns it into pixels to do it, and it's no longer vector art that's editable. So stay in this top half, okay? From here, from the top part of Illustrator Effects, we're going to distort and transform, and we're going to pick pucker and bloat from the flyout. And we get a little window, and I want you to pull it one direction or the other and turn on your preview, that helps, to see how it behaves. So the middle of the road is your circle, but if you bloat it, it looks like this, and if you pucker it, it looks like this. So look at those cool shapes that you can make without redrawing anything. You're just playing with these distort tools. We are going to drag it to the right to about 35%. That's the version of bloat that they want. And say OK. Any of these effects that we apply are live, which means at any time we see them listed over here, meaning we can edit them or remove them. They show up over here in the FX zone. We could dump it to the garbage to get rid of it, or we can click on pucker and bloat and edit it to make it different. To get out of isolation mode, you can double click away, or usually easier is just hit the escape key on your keyboard. Hold down the space bar to get the hand tool and drag over on our artboard to get these flags, and I'm going to have to zoom out a little. The days per year flag banners are what we're going to work with next. And click to select this top flag, which is a rectangle with basically a triangle cut out of it, or using the pen tool that we're going to learn a little bit today, you can just draw that out directly without combining shapes. With that selected, choose the FX, choose an effect button. We're going to choose Distort and Transform, and from here we're going to choose Twist. Turn on your preview so you can see what the twist looks like. We're going to try a 20% angle, hit Tab to accept it, and we see how it twists it and kind of makes it look like a billowing flag, which is pretty cool. Say OK to that. Click the banner next in line, and then shift-click on all of them to select all of the banners that are still rectangular at once. And then instead of going through that step that we just did, we can go up to the Effect menu, and we can see that the last effect is waiting for us here, Apply Twist. It's going to apply it exactly as it was before. So it's going to give that 20-degree twist to all of the selected shapes. All right, click away. Pretty cool. Let's just for kicks, let's look at some of these other options. So let's select a different flower. Okay, stop moving. And then again, double click to get into isolation mode. And then click on just the orange circle again to see how that, just to target that piece. And then in your FX, in Distort and Transform, if you want to look at what some of these others do, just for fun, we tried Pucker and Bloat. Let's see what Roughen does. Turn on your preview so you know, and you can roughen it up. That's one thing we could do. We could try from Distort and Transform. Transform, this is kind of like free transform where you're horizontally scaling something. Again, turn on your preview. Vertically scaling something, changing your angle. So that's another option within there. Tweak. See how that works. These are all trial and error, which is fun. Turn on your preview and look at how you can tweak this poor shape. And then were there any more? Twist we already did, and then let's see what zigzag does. Turn on your preview. It's like stars with lots of cool things. Ridges per segment. Oh my goodness. Look at all this cool stuff you can do by just pulling on sliders. Pretty neat. And the cool thing is if I say OK to this, this is all fully editable. As I have that shape selected, I see that it has a special effect of zigzag. I can come back in and modify it or turn it off. I'm going to leave it on because I think it's cool. Hit Escape to get out of isolation mode and admire the cool new flowers you made. Okay, next up is transforming with the free transform tool. This too is nested in this toolbar, or it's not. Oh, this might be one that we have to add. If you don't see it on your toolbar and it's not nested here, remember this version of Illustrator started this thing where they don't put every tool in the toolbar anymore. And because of that, they have the 3 dots at the bottom of the toolbar. So if we click on that, anything that's lit up is a tool that we can add to our toolbar. So, free transform, where are you? Here it is. It's located in the Modify section. Free transform. Actually, we need to grab 2 tools while we're here. So take the free transform tool, click and drag it. Don't nest it in anything. So get that blue line between two tools. Otherwise, if it's around a tool, it's going to nest inside. And when you have that blue line between tools, let go. And that added it to here. And then I also want to add the Puppet Warp tool, but I am going to nest that one inside the Free Transform. So Puppet Warp tool, I'm going to drag and I'm going to nest it inside of the Free Transform. So there's those two that I added to my toolbar. And oops, what am I doing now? What the heck did I just do? I made a double toolbar? Huh. Wow. Huh. All right. Window. It's always fun when stuff like this happens. Workspace. Reset essentials. There we go. I'm back to my one toolbar. Strange. Okay. Wherever you put this, go back to the Free Transform tool and have nothing selected. So I'm going to zoom out. Have nothing selected first. Good grief. Nothing selected. Go to the Free Transform tool. We're going to temporarily turn off our smart guides because sometimes when we're doing this, it wants to snap to the smart guide, and sometimes that's a problem. So under View, Smart Guides, if the check mark is there, they're on. Command U is the toggle shortcut for on and off, so temporarily turn those off. And we're going to zoom in to this left side of the middle artboard. That's the one that we want to be working on. And it's this % of years. So this is kind of like a street sign. We're going to angle it so it looks like a sign that has plates going out in all four directions. We're going to make it look in 3D basically. All right. With our Free Transform tool,
do we have to select it first?
we need to actually get a pop-up window, and I don't see that. Do you guys see an extra window of tools show up? Yes, you do. I can see on your screen. Why am I not getting those?
You have to select the object first.
Pardon?
You have to select the object to get the pop-up.
I didn't have to.
Okay. All right, so let's select the top one that says East-West, and then go into our Free Transform tool, and then the pop-up floating toolbar that shows up. We have Constrain, Free Transform, Perspective Distort, and then Free Distort. We want to choose Perspective Distort, meaning make it go out in that 3D perspective. So make sure that that's the version of the tool that we're working with. And we're going to move our pointer over the lower right corner of this bounding box, and we see that weird Perspective Distort icon show up. And from there, we're going to drag down a little bit to make it look a little bit wider on this end only. Select, with your selection tool, select East-West first. Now go into that Free Transform tool and pick the third one down. Third one. Yep. Now go to that lower right corner, and when your icon turns, yep, lower right. And then pull down. And that's going to make it look like it's bigger in front and smaller going away from you. So we're just changing it to look like that. To temporarily jump to the selection tool from any tool, you hold down the Command key, and you should get the selection tool temporarily fired up. And when we do that, we're going to click on the next piece down that says North-South, and then we're going to let go of Command, which puts us back into Free Transform, specifically the one we chose, Perspective Distort. And from here, we're going to go to the lower left-hand side, and when our cursor looks like that Perspective Distort, we're going to pull down a little bit on this side. So the left side looks closer to us, the right side looks like it's going away from us. At this point, we can turn our smart guides back on. Command U is the shortcut for that, but if you want to see it to make sure they're on, go up into the View menu and you can actually see the check mark to confirm that they're on. Okay, so we distorted those in a perspective in a 3D grid going away from us. Now what we're going to do is we're going to shear the objects. We're actually going to twist them on this pole and make them look like a real sign would look. So shearing an object slants or skews the sides along the axis that you specify, keeping opposite sides parallel. And it turns out to be very asymmetrical and look very true to 3D. So with the group labeled north-south still selected, we're going to grab the shear tool, which is nested back in that rotate family. So shear tool is in the rotate family, pick on that. Move our pointer off the right side of the group. We're going to hold down the shift key to constrain our movements in 45-degree angles, and we're going to drag up, and we're going to let go when we see a shear, which is S, of -20. So click and hold, start pulling up, hold the shift key, and when you see the S turn into a -20, approximately, so I can see that my shear is at -20, you let go of your cursor or your mouse, and then your modifier key. So it kind of sheared it or spun it in that 3D space.
I just can't get this right. I don't have that number popping up. So I need to turn the smart.
Make sure your smart guides are on,
Yeah, there we go.
and then you get the tooltip. Okay, so we're still in the shear tool. We're going to temporarily get our selection tool by holding down the command key, and we're going to click on the east-west shape and then let go of the command key. And when we do that, we're right back into our shear. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to go the right side of this group. We're going to drag down to a shear of a -160. So hold shift and it'll constrain you. So -160-ish. So we got that one to go that way. Then we're going to switch to our selection tool, and we're going to select the east-west group, and we're going to just move it so that divider line between east and west, the two colors, is centered over the pole. And then we're going to do the same thing with the north-south. We're going to bring that up, and we're kind of going to stack them so they actually look like a street sign, like this. All right, they're obviously not stacked right. Something's a little goofy. Click on the north-south group to select that if you need to, and then we're going to ungroup it. We're going to come over to our Properties panel and click on Ungroup. Click away to deselect it completely. Now we just want to click on the north side of it, the piece that has the shape that says north only, because we ungrouped it. And we want to arrange that so it comes to the front of our stack. So we're going to say Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. So we didn't want to bring the south part of that group to the front. That's why we ungrouped it first, so we could just move that north side to the top of our stack. Then just to clean this up, there's some percentage numbers that are meant to go at the end of each of these. So drag those into better position to clean this up so it makes sense with our graphic. Obviously the measurements don't match the size of the north, south, east, west, but it cleans up our graphic quite a bit. Fit all in the window, click to deselect, and we're going to save at this point. All right, the last part of this chapter is one of the coolest parts. It is the Puppet Warp tool. So the first thing we need to do is use our selection tool and go down and grab the raincoat man that's going sideways. and we need to drag him up and put him on the flagpole with his hands on the flagpole, and then zoom in so we can work on that. So he's hanging on to the flagpole and it's windy and he's getting blown off to the side of it. Make sure that the hands are on the flagpole if you need to shift that a little bit. All right, we're going to go into the puppet warp tool. We just brought that one into our toolbar and we nested it under the free transform tool. So go ahead and grab the puppet warp tool and instantly some stuff happens. Make sure you're zoomed in so you can see this, it's important. The puppet warp tool is new from last year in that it automatically adds pins where it thinks they might be needed, and it put this whole mesh over this. So everywhere that there's a pin, those points are anchored, but the other points can hinge around from those points. So sometimes the pins that it puts in are good, sometimes they aren't good. What we're going to do first is we're going to add a pin. So using that pin tool, we're going to go on this top arm about halfway down where an elbow would be, and we're going to click to put a pin there. Now, if we leave the hand where it is, but we rotate the body, it can rotate around this elbow point. In the Properties panel over on our right, we can see options, and one of the options is to show this mesh. Down here it's turned on. You don't have to have that on. You can click to turn it off. Now you just see your pins instead. We're going to click on the hand pin to select it, and when we do that, we get that white dot inside it showing that it's selected. And we're going to drag this pin up on the flagpole. Notice that the elbow stays because we put that in there. Had we not done that, the next pin would have either been the head or the body, and all of this would have, that's where it would have bent from. So we added the elbow to keep that pin there and just move his hand up the line here. All right, the other thing we can do is with this pin still selected, you see how there's this dotted circle around it? We can move our pointer over the dotted circle and drag counterclockwise a little bit, and you'll see how it's twisting. So it's like his wrist is kind of coming up. So twist that. Anybody think this is cool? I think this is insane. We can put puppets in this stuff and do things. If you think about character animation and you have your original person and using this, you can make all these different poses and emotions. It's pretty cool. Okay, so we did that with the wrist and we twisted the wrist a smidge. We're going to click on the pin that was added to his leg, and we're going to select it, and then we're going to hit delete on our keyboard. That pin is not necessary. We don't want it or need it. But we do want to add one between both feet. So in that space between the feet, click to add a pin. And then we're just going to drag this pin up to make it look like his feet are floating up in the air. We're going to move our pointer around the dotted circle, and we're going to drag a little bit counterclockwise to bend him even a little bit more. And that's pretty cool. Agreed? Okay. Click to the selection tool and then click away to deselect. Let's fit everything in our window. Make sure nothing's selected. And we just made a pretty cool thing. This is called the front. This is called the back. And that's what your inside panel looks like when it's open. It's a spread. So it's a pretty cool infographic, and we did some pretty neat things with all these different options of transforming. Everybody good with that and feel good about it? Okay. You can save the file if you want to go back and reference it for any reason. And we are done with chapter 5. So some new skills that you learned.